So tonight we're continuing Tehilim. We're going to do 4 smaller chapters, 131, 132, 133, and 134. These are relatively easy to follow. David HaMelech takes center stage over here, and so does the Bet HaMikdash, the temple. Some of it is about his efforts in building the temple, and some of it relates to the end of days. The emphasis, however, will be on the importance of this Bet HaMikdash to the entire world, not just to the Jewish people. What's the importance of this temple? Why is it so significant in our life? Why is it so important to the world? You will see that there's a lot of mention of blessing here. What exactly is a blessing? So in chapter 131, it's interesting that David HaMelech speaks a little bit about his efforts, but he says, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to take any credit for this. I'm not an arrogant person. So the segula, the special powers of this chapter, is for someone who is arrogant, who has a problem with arrogance, who loves to take credit. Small chapter, nonetheless, it contains a very valuable lesson. When you want to do something and you want to succeed in it, be very careful not to take credit for it. Give the credit to Hashem. And when we do something, in Judaism there's an emphasis of doing things l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. Hashem, do it for your sake, not for us. It's always more powerful. And in this way you also are not, hopefully, you're not going to get into trouble with becoming arrogant as a result of your success. So Shir HaMa'alot LeDavid Adonai lo gavah libi velo ramu einai velo ilachti bigdolot ubediflaot mimeni. So David HaMelech begins the chapter by telling us that this is a song of ascents, the Ma'alot that we spoke about earlier. And this is by David. He composed it. And it says, Hashem, my heart was not proud, nor were my eyes haughty. I did not seek matters that were too great and too wondrous for me. It was my efforts, whether it was in seeking a place to build a temple, or in bringing back the Aron, the Ark of Covenant that was taken captive by the Philistines, the Philistines, for a while. Regardless of whatever it was that he did that was in public, he says, I never did anything for my sake. I did not take any credit for it. Now you notice that he says 2 things here. Lo gavah libi velo ramu einai, which appears to be redundant. My heart was not proud, nor were my eyes haughty. Is there a difference? Remember what I always say, nothing is repetitive. There's always an additional detail. Even though he's talking about arrogance, one is in his heart. My heart was not proud. Inwardly, he did not feel so great about himself because he did something so special. And lo ramu einai, when he's describing about his eyes being haughty, that is in public, giving the impression to people, he's the king, he's the one that made all this effort, and it's because of him. A lot of people have a problem with this, have a weakness. They like to show off. David HaMelech says, even though I'm the king and I have all the right to display all the might and the power and so forth, I never did anything along those lines. With his interest in mind. No, everything was for the sake of Hashem. Well, what about the last words? That doesn't seem to be too related to the first words of the verse. I did not seek matters that were too great or too wondrous. What's the relation here to the first words? Some of the commentaries say that here he's insinuating about the time when he brought back the Ark of Covenant. They had a tremendous celebration, and he of course was involved. And if you read the description of his involvement and what he did to celebrate, he started dancing like an ordinary individual, like an ordinary citizen. He was probably rolled up his sleeves, took off his coat or whatever. And not everybody thought that was such a nice thing to do. It wasn't dignified of him. But what did he say? How did he react towards that? I'm not going to care about my dignity. This is about the dignity of God. And I'm going to do everything to show my respect for the Aron Hashem, for the Ark of Covenant. Even though it means that I have to belittle myself. So in describing that particular celebration, he says, Lo hilachti b'gdolot. Don't think that I was looking to aggrandize myself. Even though I was in that position at the time, as king. No, I didn't look for that. Look at Pasuk Bet. And in Pasuk Bet, number 2, he appears to be continuing to elaborate a little bit more about it. And he says why. He explains to us how he became so humble, how he never thought of even taking any credit for what he did. From early on in his life, ever since he was chosen, anointed to be the king, and later on for the various battles that he fought, he obviously realized his dependence in Hashem. He saw open miracles. So look at verse Bet. Im lo shiviti vedomanti nafshi kegamul alei almo kagamul alei nafshi. So this is a little bit difficult to translate, and you might find different translation. I'm going to more or less give my own translation to the words, not use any other translation. He's basically saying, I give you my word. Im lo shiviti vedomanti. If it's not what I told you earlier, that I actually placed my nafshi, my soul, kegamul alei imo, like a weaned child with his mother. In other words, I basically realized early on that I'm like a weaned child. What's a weaned child? He was nursing from his mother. I realized early on that I depend on Hashem, just like an infant depends on his mother. So even though he just finished nursing, weaning him is the stage when the child no longer needs the mother's milk, and he's almost on his own, but he's not completely on his own, he's still a child. I still realized that I'm kegamula leimo, like a weaned child. My soul was like a weaned child. So he says it again 2 times. He's referring physically, he's dependent on Hashem, and so is nafshi, his soul. So this is just a way of describing how he never for a moment thought that he could achieve what he achieved on his own. Another example of what he's referring to is the defeat of Goliath. If you remember the story of Goliath, he's a young boy. He's not an experienced warrior. He's not so strong. And here he's facing Goliath, a giant. Nobody else could have defeated Goliath. But it was an obvious miracle. So he has all that in mind and says, "Ino shiviti vedomanti." In other words, believe me. It's like he's swearing. He's making a promise. It was never me who did this. I was dependent on Hashem. He's the one that gets all the credit. So the words shiviti and domanti, nafshi, means to place yourself or to put yourself in that position. I put myself in the position of this infant. When I thought about it, I realized I could never have done this on my own. Just like an infant is so dependent on its mother. Pasuk Gimel, Yachel Yisrael el Adonai me'ata v'ad olam. Let Israel hope in Hashem from this time forth and forever. So this is a continuation to what he just said before, our dependence in Hashem. Let it always be so. He encourages us that we should always be humble and always turn to Hashem, pray to Hashem, and realize that all our salvation comes from Him. Very important words because of this particular problem that some people may have, whether they're leaders, generals, successful in any enterprise. Be careful not to take the credit yourself. It's all from Hashem. Chapter 132. Whoever has a weakness of swearing, Shavuot. This is a chapter that hopefully will help him to fulfill what he made. It was the oath that he made, the promises that he made. So this is a chapter for that purpose. Kuf Lamed Bet, 132. Shir HaMa'alot, Zechor Adonai LeDavid et kol unoto, a song of ascents. Hashem, remember unto David all his suffering. This chapter is a little bit longer, and here he describes all the efforts that he made to find the location of where the Bet HaMikdash eventually would be built. He did not know exactly where it was. They knew approximately, but they did not know exactly. So even though he already knows by now that he's not building yet, he still wants to begin. He wants to initiate. He wants to start the project. He wants to have a part of it. So he says, remember Hashem unto David all his sufferings, all the suffering that he went through, all the efforts that he made. Now, why talk about the suffering? Why talk about the effort? Even though a person does not always succeed in doing something, a maaseh, an act, he was successful, he tried. The trying, the attempt that one makes is also worth something in Shamayim. Every attempt that one makes, the thoughts that one had, as long as they're real thoughts, the planning that went into something, even though it did not materialize, it's still worth something. They still counted as something. And that is why he puts an emphasis on this. Unoto, all his suffering, all his efforts that he made towards building the Bet HaMikdash. Bet Asher Nishba L'Adonai Nadar L'Avir Yaakov, how he swore to Hashem and vowed to the mighty power of Jacob. Isn't that interesting that he talks about Yaakov over here, not Abraham and Yitzchak, and you wonder why? Because Yaakov is the one that made a neder too. He also made a promise. He also made a vow. So he is connecting himself to the one who first began with this neder, with making a vow. So he made a vow too, that he will continuously look for this place until he finds it. But why make a vow? It's just a way of saying, I'm going to try very, very hard. And I promise to myself, nothing will stop me. Sometimes that's what will do it. If a person sees that he's having a very hard time doing something and he may give up, and this is something special, it's a mitzvah, it may be permissible to make a neder or a shavua. Because that may get him motivated, that may get him going. That's what he says, I made that vow. And who did I follow as an example? Abir Yaakov, the mighty power of Yaakov. That is where we draw the power of the neder, from that example of Yaakov, who also made a vow that if he comes back home in peace, as you recall in the Torah. What's the Shavuah of David HaMelech here? Imavo be'oel beti me'eleh al eretz yetzuai. I will not enter into the tent of my house, I will not go up into the bed that is spread for me. In other words, I will not stop doing what I'm doing for the Bet HaMikdash. I will continuously do so. But wait a minute, you have to go to sleep. So what does it mean I will not enter my tent, I will not go to bed? Well, it just means that he will not sleep, a regular sleep, a temporary sleep, of course, you need to, until he gets this job done. In order to understand this idea a little bit better, I'm going to tell you a story that happened with Rav Chaim Obrisk, a great rabbi who lived about a little over 100 years ago. There was a big fire in his town once. And in those days, there weren't fire departments and easy ways of extinguishing a fire. And if a few houses burned down, the fire could easily spread and the whole town could burn down. And that's what happened. There was a lot of damage, a lot of people lost their homes. During this entire time that people were in the process of recovering, the rabbi did not sleep in his bed. They asked him, why don't you go to sleep in your bed? Why don't you sleep comfortably? He says, how could I sleep in my bed when I know so many people are not sleeping in the bed? When there's so many people who are homeless, who don't have a roof over their head, who are still struggling, how could I sleep myself? So, similar idea over here, David HaMelech says, Hashem's house is not built yet. How could I, go into my tent, into my home, and feel comfortable about it. So that's what he's describing, more or less. Same thing with verse Dalet. I will not give sleep to my eyes, nor slumber to my eyelids. What does that mean? What we just said, that he will not be able to sleep, get a normal sleep until this job is done. Look how much importance he's attributing to the building of the Beit HaMikdash, which we will see soon why this was so important to him. Even though he knows that he's not going to end up building it, it's going to be Shlomo Melech. Still, he says, I'm not going to go to sleep, I'm not going to take care of my own interests until I get this job done. This is so important. And he explains in the next verse, in Pasuk Hey, what exactly he's trying to accomplish. If you're not going to build it, what do you want to do? Ad emtza makom lavonai mishkanot la'avir Yaakov. Until I have found a place for Hashem, a resting place for the mighty power of Yaakov. Again, he mentions Yaakov. The Jewish nation is formed from Yaakov. And what he's looking for is a place for Mishkanot, a resting place. Well, we must remember that up until then, there was a Mishkan, a tabernacle, that moved from place to place. It was not a fixed place. It was not a resting place. So even though the Jewish nation has come into Eretz Yisrael, has come into the land of Israel, they want to come to this final resting place where the temple will be built, where the Shekhinah will reside, hopefully permanently. There's great importance to having a permanent place. For example, the rabbis tell us when you go to pray in a synagogue, make sure that you have a seat that is always yours, if possible. Something permanent. Not that you're always moving around from place to place. Permanence is important because it enables us to focus better. This is the house of Hashem. This is where it will be. This is where we all turn to. And how do we turn to? So if you're in California, you turn east. If you're in China, you turn west, facing Israel. And if you're in Israel, you face Yerushalayim. And if you're in Yerushalayim, you face the Western Wall. You see what I mean? So we're always facing that central location. That is a permanent place of where the Shekhinah resides, even though there's no temple today. As our tradition tells us, that ever since the temple, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, HaShekhinah lo zaza mikotel HaMaravi. The divine presence is still there at the Western Wall, ever since. All right, so he's looking for the place. He does not have clarity where it is. So he continues on to describe his efforts on how he went about finding this location. Look at Vav and Zayin. Pasuk Vav, verse 6. Hine shema'anua be'efrata metzanuha bisdei ya'ar. We first thought that it was in Ephrata. We heard it was in Ephrata, but we found it in the field of the forest. What's Ephrata? Ephrata is around the area of Bethlehem, where the wife of Yaakov, Rachel, is buried. Why mention Ephrata? Whoever told her that it's in Ephrata? So there are various explanations here. Some say that there were some instructions in the book of Yoshua, where the Beit HaMikdash is. And Yoshua is from Ephraim, the son of Yosef, was from Rachel. So there's a remez, a hint over here, to the book of Yoshua, by saying the word Ephrata. That's one explanation. Some say Ephrata really refers to Binyamin. Binyamin is the son of Rachel. And that's where the Beit HaMikdash really was, on that part of Binyamin. There was a certain spot that belonged to Binyamin, even though we're talking about the general area of Yehuda, the Beit HaMikdash was sitting on the piece of land that belonged to Binyamin. So that's also perhaps insinuated in the word Ephrata. It could also be that that's the place where they thought it was, Ephrata just being the name of a location. But where was it at the end? Matzanuha bisdei ya'ar. The location, the final location, he was told, was the granary of Arvana Hayevusi, where he purchased the plot, even though that individual wanted to give it to him for free to build the Bet HaMikdash. He paid for it. And what he did was to build a Mizbeach. That he did. He right away was told that he needs to begin to build a Mizbeach because there was a terrible plague. A lot of people, a lot of Jews died as a result of the plague, and he realized the importance of immediately building a Mizbeach at that spot, and therefore he went out of his way to find it right away and begin bringing sacrifices there. Pasuk Zayin, Navoa lemishkenotav nishtachaveh le'adom raglav. We will come to his resting place and we will prostrate ourselves at his footstool. Here he already describes to us the importance of such a location, to be able to have a place where everybody can come and pray. As opposed to what? As opposed to praying in your own living room, in your own backyard. It's not the same. Rabbis tell us there's a great difference between praying in a synagogue, in a temple, in a holy place, versus another place which is not holy. The same thing is, there's a big difference between praying by yourself versus praying with a group of people, a minyan. So let us have this place so that we can all come, and ishtachaveh le'adom raglav, so that we can prostrate ourselves before Hashem. On the next pasuk, Kum Adonai lemenuchatecha ata v'aron uzecha. So ascend Hashem to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. This is also a description of how the Aron, the ark, was going from place to place. It needed to be in one place. So he's asking for Hashem to finally bring this up to be. In other words, choose the spot so that we can build the temple so the Aron could come and finally rest where it should be. That was the location where the first temple was built. That was the location where the second temple was built. And that is the location where the third temple will also be built. In other words, the particular spot had already been known to Hashem. It was from day one. That was going to be the spot. It wasn't that they figured it out later, they decided, okay, this seems to be the best place. Even though they had a description of more or less where it is, they never knew exactly where it would be. Yaakov Avinu did have some idea because he had a dream, remember? He stopped, he had an incredible vision of the angels going up and down, and he realized that this is the mountain of Hashem. This is the gate of Shamayim. So there's definitely more holiness in that particular spot. As the rabbis tell us, there's different levels of holiness in Israel. Yerushalayim, Tzfat, Tveria, Hebron, they are holier cities. A lot of that holiness has to do, of course, with what was done there later on. Here we're talking about a place that is special from the very beginning. This is Har HaMoriah. This is where the Akedah took place, the Akedah of Yitzchak. So that particular location has great significance. Why? What's so special? We don't know. I mean, what exactly is there in the geography of the place or in that particular hill? That we don't know. All we know, for example, about Sinai. Why was Sinai chosen? Is because Sinai is a lower mountain, humble. So that is a little bit of a description of why Hashem chose that mountain. By the way, it's a good thing that he did not choose Everest. Otherwise, we would have had to use oxygen over there. Anyway, there's all kinds of reasons of why Hashem chooses a particular spot. We don't know. We do know it's holy. What will happen after the Bet HaMikdash is built? Verse 9. So may your priests clothe themselves in righteousness, and may your pious ones sing joyous songs. So here he's talking about the Kohanim, but why tzedek? Why should they clothe themselves in righteousness? He's talking about the Bigdei Kehunah, the garments, the vestments of the Kohanim. They acted as atonement. When the Kohen Gadol put on certain garments, it actually atoned for certain things. So that's why it's called tzedek, the garments of righteousness. And who are the Hasidim, the pious ones? Are the Leviim, who would sing to Hashem. But there's another reason why he calls them Yilbeshu Tzedek here. Because you don't find this term too often. Some of the verses refers to the end of days. So when he's talking about the priests that will put on the garments of righteousness, he's talking about even the non-Jews in the future, in the end of days, who will come close, who will convert and want to be part of the Jewish nation. They will want to put on these garments, and they will, of course, be accepted. These will be the righteous of the nations. So that is why you have the word righteousness here mentioned. You see, tzedek, righteousness, righteous of the nations, those that will have the merit of being around when Mashiach comes. Pasuk Yud, Ba'avur David avdecha tasher pnei meshichecha. For the sake of David, your servant, turn not away the face of your anointed. So here, he's making a special prayer. He realizes that it is from his seed that there will be kings. That was already promised to him. As he will say in the next verse, Hashem promised that to him. But he's afraid of something called Shema Yigrom Achet. There's an idea called that sometimes the sin, if a person commits a sin, that sin may prevent him from getting what he was supposed to get. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody is supposed to marry someone at the age of 23. Soulmates, but he's been misbehaving. He has chataim, he's committed sins. Those chataim, alulim ligrom, they can cause some sort of delay in getting what he was supposed to get. That's called Shema Yigrom Achet. Yaakov Avinu was concerned about this too. He says, oh no, Esav is coming after me. What are you afraid of Esav for? You're a good guy. He says, I don't know if I'm so good. Perhaps I made a mistake, perhaps I sinned once upon a time. I don't have any more merits, I used them up. Esav has some very strong merits with Kibud Avayim. So he, Yaakov, was concerned. We all need to be concerned. Sometimes it could be because of some chet that we lose out in some area. Now obviously Hashem does tremendous chesed with everyone. Chesed, the attribute of kindness, is even with those who don't deserve it. The problem is that if there are chataim, they cause accusations. So we have to overcome those accusations. So that's why it's always important to pray. And that's what he does over here. At the very least pray, because if there is something in the way, hopefully you'll be able to cancel that accusation. So he says, Ba'avur David avdecha, for me, al tasher pnei meshichecha. Do not turn away the face of your anointed. In other words, who's the anointed? Shlomo Melech. Because he's not going to be the one that's going to build it. So let him succeed in building this Bet HaMikdash for you. Verse 11 is his promise. Hashem made the promise, Nishba Adonai leDavid emet lo yashuv mimena mipri vitnecha ashit lechiselach. So he says it very clearly. For Hashem has sworn to David a truth from which he will never retreat. From the fruit of your womb, in other words, from your seed, will I set for you upon the throne. So Hashem told him it's going to be from you, not from some other tribe, not from some other person. From you, it will be that whoever will be the king will come from your seed. The problem is that even though that is a promise to him that it will be from his seed, what about whether that particular king, that grandson, whether he succeeds or fails, how long will he be the king? Maybe he will die, killed in battle. That is not promised. And that's what happened if you look at the history of the kings. Unfortunately, many of them were idolatrous. Many of them did not go in the right path. And they were killed, or they died early from all kinds of reasons. So here, David HaMelech, of course, realizes the importance of praying, but how much can you pray? You cannot control the actions of future generations. But at the very least, he was promised that the kings will be from his descendants, from his seed. Yud Bet. So in verse 12, he explains, I realize that this is all contingent. The Melucha, the reign from the house of David, is contingent. Im yishmeru banecha beriti vedoti zu alamedem gam benehem ad yeshvu lechiserach. See, very, very clearly he says, If your sons will keep my covenant and this testimony of mine, which I will teach them, then their sons too will sit on the throne for you until the end of time. Imagine, this could have been possible. I mean, had there not been a destruction of the temple, there would be continuous kings. There was an interruption. When Mashiach comes, it is restored. From where? From David. So Mashiach is from the seed of David. But all along, whether the melucha, whether the reign, whether the king will have an easy time and have no war to deal with, that will depend on whether they observe the covenant or not. And since they did not, they suffered a lot. You can read it in the books of Melachim. They didn't last too long. Because all of this is on condition that they observe the covenant. Verse 13, Ki bachar Adonai b'Tzion yivach lemoshav lo. So in 13 he explains, for Hashem has chosen Tzion, he has desired it for his habitation. Very interesting verse. Here he's telling us, you know this place called Tzion, or Yerushalayim? Hashem chose it. This is a choice made by Hashem. This is a choice that was made a long time ago. Now, it's interesting how a lot of people doubt that there was, some people doubt whether there was ever a temple there. Some people want to deny it, that the Jewish people have any connection to that place. When the Pasuk says here that this is the place that Hashem chose, you will see indicators towards it. You will see indicators that this is a fact. And that is what's happening today. All of a sudden, all these leaders from many, many nations decided to come to Jerusalem, not to some other city in the world, and meet and discuss about 75 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, you may have heard. They all met there to discuss the future, I guess, of how to prevent such wars. Where do they meet? In Zion, in Yerushalayim. This is the place that Hashem has chosen. So there will always be signs that this is the spot that Hashem chose all along. And they fought for it, the Muslims and the Christians too. Why are you fighting about this? Why don't you go to Addis Ababa? You know where that is? Ethiopia. Why don't you just go somewhere else? You know, what's so special about Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim will be very, very special. As all the prophets described, it will be the focal point in the future. And it was from the very, very beginning. So that's why there's an emphasis pointing this out. Hashem chose this. This is a special spot. Why did Hashem choose it for? Lemoshav lo. This is where he wants to reside. His resting place. This is where he wants to dwell. Zot menuchati ade'ad po eshev ki v'tiha. Verse 14 is the continuation. This is my resting place to the end of time. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. Till the end of time. 2020. That's this year. There's still some presence there. It's an old city. There was always something there. There are very few cities in the world that can show continuous, I guess, life. That people have been living there for a long, long time. Yerushalayim is one of them. It's been around for a long time, even though obviously it's not today what it was when we had a Bet HaMikdash. It's not 100 years ago. It's not close to what it is today, because of obviously they built it up and it looks a lot more developed. But still, that's the general location where so much action occurred in the past, and a lot more action is going to take place there soon. That's the spot that Hashem chose for himself. Pasuk Tetvav, now he's talking about the blessing that will come from that place. It's not just about the Bet HaMikdash. Tzedam barecha varech evyoneh azbiah lachem. I will abundantly bless her sustenance. I will satisfy her needy with bread. This is the place from where the beracha comes to the world, not just to Israel, to the world. And the Midrash says, had the non-Jews known that this is where the tzeddah, where the blessing, the sustenance comes from, they would have protected it, the Bet HaMikdash. They would never have thought of destroying it. On the contrary, they would have set up guards around it to protect that house of Hashem. This is where the blessing comes out from. So a lot of people do not realize what the world is missing as a result of not having the Beit HaMikdash. What will take place in the future when it will be rebuilt? Pasuk Tet Zayin, V'chohanea albish yesha v'chasideha neranen yiranenu. So this is similar to what we said before. I will clothe her priests with salvation, and her pious ones will sing joyous songs. But look how here the Pasuk uses the word yesha and not tzedek. They will be clothed with salvation. Why salvation? Because we're no longer just talking about regular garments of atonement. We're talking about a time when there will be salvation. Because when the Beit HaMikdash will be restored, that's what the whole world will see. What will come out from this Beit HaMikdash. There will be yesha, there will be salvation, which is a higher level than just, atonement for certain sins. This higher level, it will be in the end of days. So the service of the temple, which is what this is describing, will be restored, and apparently it is very important that we have the service of the temple. This is what will bring Yesha to the world. When we talk about Yesha, what exactly do we mean? Think of it as follows. Today, you heard probably in the news, there was a major earthquake. In various spots of the world, there have lately been some very powerful earthquakes. There have been tremendous floods as well. And there have been tremendous fires as well. All of this phenomena, what is that? It's destructive. Lives are lost. When you have Yesha, you don't have that. They will be responsible. They will be in charge. Remember, the priests have a very important job, a very important responsibility. They're the ones that bless the Jewish people when they raise their hands. They're the ones that bring the sacrifices. So you still have, even though eventually everybody will come close to Hashem, everybody will be observant to the Torah, but you still have certain individuals who will be devoted to the Avodat Hashem, to the service of God, through whom there will be Yesha. And the Leviim, Ranen Yiranenu, they will sing joyous songs. Look at the Hebrew, Ranen Yiranenu. It's not just Yiranenu, Ranen Yiranenu. It's emphasizing that there will be so much joy, so much simcha, a lot of music, more than the ordinary. Yud Zayin, verse 17, Sham atzmiach keren leDavid arachti ner lemishichi. There I will cause David's power to flourish. There I have prepared a lamp for my anointed. This is a description of Mashiach, coming from the seed of David. The word keren here means power. Was that power will once again flourish. It will become noticeable. And that is the place where arachti ner lemishichi. Arachti means to prepare, to arrange a lamp, a light for Mashiach. This is a little bit vague. What do we mean by lamp? What do you mean by light? The commentaries don't talk too much about this, but I believe this could also be relating to what the prophets say, that there will be a tremendous light coming from Yerushalayim, coming from Mashiach. In other words, it will be obvious. When there's light, things become clear. People know where to go. This is the right place to go. This is where all the action will be. This is what really matters and what is really important. So when we talk about Ner with Mashiach, we're associating light or something that's very special with him as a person, as well as with Yerushalayim, with the service in the Beit HaMikdash. Everybody will want to follow, everybody will go in that path. So when it's illuminated, they will know where to go. So he will be the leader who everyone will follow. It will become obvious. It will be full of light. And when that happens, the last verse of this chapter says, Oivav al bish boshet v'alav yetzitz nizro. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon him his crown will blossom. So there will be a lot of people that will be put to shame, all the enemies. And he will have the crown. His crown will blossom. So this is a description of how he will be the chosen one. He will be the leader. And the enemies, whoever remains of the enemies, will go through tremendous busha. I'm not so sure why the word albish is used. Look at the word albish boshes. I will clothe with shame. Why use the word clothe? I will shame them. Anybody want to suggest why is there a... Why describe the shame as being clothing on them? I think the simple idea behind it is because sometimes you don't see shame. Someone is in shame, someone is ashamed, he's embarrassed. You don't really see it necessarily. But when it's being worn, then it will be obvious. In other words, everybody will be able to tell how certain enemies were humiliated, are going through so much shame for the actions of the past. And this is important. Why? Because part of the rectification, part of the nekama, of the revenge in the future, is that the victors should see in the downfall of those that perpetrated so much hate and so much murder. Let them see their downfall. So that it has to be something that we can see. Not that just we are told that Hashem got rid of them. He eliminated the bad guys. No, they will be dressed up. It will be clear to everyone that these were the bad guys. They will go through the shame. Chapter 133. 133 and 134 are very, very small. The segula for chapter 133 is to preserve friendship. It's a beautiful chapter. It's a very well-known chapter. And it could help bring about friendship. Shir HaMa'alot LeDavid. Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. There's even a song with these words. A song of ascents by David. Behold, how good and how pleasant is it when brothers dwell together. As you know, it's very, very sad, but sometimes brothers don't dwell together. There's no unity. There's no brotherliness. They don't care about each other, even though they're brothers, same parents. But it happens for all kinds of reasons. So how beautiful it is indeed when you have unity. So he's talking about the end of the days, when the unity will be noticeable, when the entire Jewish nation, all the 12 tribes will come together. They will all be together. They will all respect each other. And it will be a beautiful sight. But it's not just talking about the Jewish people, it's talking about Moshe and Aaron. Moshe was given melucha, at least during his lifetime. He was like the king and Aaron was the priest. And there was no envy between the two of them. They were united. They were in peace. And it was a beautiful sight to behold. What else can be seen that relates to unity from the Bet HaMikdash? The Keruvim. The Keruvim were those what appeared like two children with wings on the kaporet, on the gold kaporet, which was the cover of the ark. You had this keruvim, that's the way the Torah calls it, like two angels, two little children. So the rabbis tell us that whenever the Jewish people were united, when they were meritorious, when they were doing what is expected of them, they can see if Hashem was happy with them or not, whether the two were facing each other, the keruvim. When they opened up the parochet, the curtain, from a distance, they would be able to see the keruvim facing each other. That was a sign that Hashem approves of their deeds, that Hashem is happy with them. If Hashem was not happy with them, then the two keruvim moved to the side. And that was not a good sign. So through the keruvim, you would be able to see whether it was shevet achim gam yachad, if there was unity and if Hashem was happy with us. Pasuk bet, kashemen atov al harosh yored al hazakan zekan ha'aron sheyored al pi midotav. Like the precious oil placed upon the head, flowing in abundance down the beard of Aaron, which rests upon his garments. So Aaron is anointed, you have this special oil that's placed on his head, and it is abundant. So because there's so much of it, it comes down all the way to his garments. This is a description of how the beracha works. The beracha comes down from above, and it spreads, and it reaches all the way to the bottom. So what is it talking about here? It's talking about how the beracha comes from Yerushalayim. That's where the beracha comes from. And it reaches everywhere. It comes out from there, and it goes everywhere. So it is compared to the oil which is precious, which is important, the oil of anointment. In other words, when we have the service of the Bet HaMikdash, when we have the Kohanim in their service and the Leviim in their song, when everything is functioning just right, we have all that beracha that's coming from above, from the top, and going everywhere. Same thing with verse Gimel. It's a continuation. Ketal Chermon sheyored al harerei Tzion ki sham tziva Adonai et haberacha chaim ad haolam. Like the dew of Chermon, which comes down upon the mountains of Tzion, for there the Hashem has commanded blessing, life unto eternity. A description of how Chermon, which is a much higher mountain, that which comes down on the top goes all the way to the lower places, which is Harerei Tzion. And that's where Hashem tziva, that's where He commanded that the blessing should come forth, and from there to go out to the rest of the world. But look at the words Kisham Tziva Hashem. That's a very important point in reminding us that the beracha, the blessing, comes from Him, not from anything else. However, in order to bring about this blessing, we have to act down here below. So you have the Kohanim, you have the Leviim, you have the rest of Am Yisrael doing whatever it is that they're supposed to do, and that activates the beracha. We bless, we pray, we do what we're supposed to do, and that brings about the beracha from above. As the Zohar and the Kabbalah explain, that certain actions that come down from above need to be activated first down here. That's called an itaruta dele tata. There's an awakening down here, and that awakening down here causes or produces an awakening above. So in order for us to get the beracha from above, one has to do something down here below. I've talked about this before. Berachot are so powerful. A person may have a very weak mazal. Mazal. Things are not going so well because of the mazal, not because of anything wrong that he did. What can he do? Now, the Jewish people are above the mazal. That means we can change it through prayer, through repentance, through charity. But there's also something called beracha. Beracha is a blessing. In other words, we want Hashem to bless us. When you are blessed, then you overcome any hurdles, any obstacles whatsoever. There's various ways of how one can get a beracha. Sometimes people used to go to very, very righteous people, tzaddikim, who had this power to give a blessing. And it worked. Couples who didn't have kids, they sometimes went to a big rabbi and asked for a blessing, and he got a blessing. But how do you get the blessing? Just like that, you ask for a blessing, you get it. So there was once a couple who was having a very hard time. She couldn't become pregnant. They didn't have kids. So she told her husband, come on, I'll go with you next time to your rabbi. You have such a great rabbi, why don't you ask him for a blessing? So they came to the rabbi, and Rabbi, please bless us with kids. The rabbi says, fine, it's going to cost you 500 rubles. It's expensive, 500 rubles? That was a very large amount of money. He says, yes, nothing is for free. And they said, no, we can't afford that, perhaps 250? They started negotiating. The rabbi said, not a penny less, 500. So the husband and wife left the room, and the rabbi overheard their conversation. And the lady tells her husband, we don't need the rabbi. Let's just, go and pray to God. Why come to the rabbi? Let's just pray to God directly. So the rabbi comes out and says, that's exactly what I wanted you to do. That's why I raised the price to 500. What do you think, I'm God? I can give you, of course, a blessing, but don't think it's from the blessing alone. It's from Hashem. Hashem is the one that gives the blessing. But you have to do something too. You have to pray. You have to do the mitzvot. You have to take upon yourself perhaps something, make a commitment. So we are being reminded, Kisham tziva Hashem ta beracha. Yes, the beracha comes from there. But who's the one that brings about the beracha? Hashem. And when will He bring about the beracha? If we do something down here below. Chapter 134. The segula for this small chapter is to say it before one learns, one begins to learn. Perhaps it will help him gain greater clarity in his learning. שיר המעלות הנה ברכו את אדוני כל עבדי אדוני העומדים בבית אדוני בלילות. A song of ascents, behold, bless Hashem, all you servants of Hashem who stand in the house of Hashem in the nights. So he's saying that there is great importance of serving Hashem, blessing Hashem, learning the Torah at night. He specifically says night. Why? Because at night, most people are asleep. And as we've said many, many times, it's a propitious time to learn, especially the second half of the night. Because the first half up until midnight is a time of judgment. After midnight until the morning is a very propitious time. Everybody else is asleep, but here you have this person saying Tehilim or learning Torah or whatever it is. It makes a big impression in the upper worlds. So he is encouraging that. Bless Hashem, serve Hashem. Those who are bevet Hashem, in the house of Hashem, whether it's in the Bet Midrash, in the house of study, or at the temple, the synagogue, and you're doing so at night, continue to do so. Because this is what will bring beracha. This is what we just said before. This is something that can add great merit to the person. Whether it's tikkun chatzot, that special prayer at midnight, or anything else during that time. Now most people cannot do this. It's not so easy to do. Because of their schedule, they work during the day, they can't get up in the middle of the night. But it's okay even a few nights a year. We stay up Shavuot, we stay up Hoshana Rabbah. And for those who can get up a little earlier, even if you're not up at midnight, but you get up a little bit early and you pray at Vatikin, at Netz, the early prayer in the morning, all of this has great value. Pasuk Bet, Seu yedechem kodesh uvarechu et Adonai. Lift up your hands in holiness and bless Hashem. So even though he's referring to the Kohanim over here, it really could be referring to anyone. Lifting your hands in holiness, what that means is not just cleanliness, to wash your hands. That's the simple translation. We're talking about holiness here, not necessarily purity. So the commentaries say, this is saying, amend your deeds. Before you raise your hands, why do we raise our hands? Why do we lift them? In prayer, making requests of Hashem. If you do so, just make sure, Kodesh, that it's done with holiness, and then bless Hashem. Otherwise, imagine somebody blessing Hashem, thanking Hashem, or I should say praying to Hashem, and making all these requests. If it's not with Kedusha, then they won't listen to him. We have to first make sure that our deeds are meritorious, that they are holy, and then we can lift our hands in prayer and bless Hashem. Obviously, this is also referring to the Kohanim, since they have such an important task, that they should also be careful to do it with Kedusha. This is missing in the Second Temple era, when a lot of the high priests were not appointed to it because of their merit, because they were so special. They bought it. They paid for it. There was a lot of corruption. There was no Kedusha. That's why they didn't last. They didn't live more than a year or so after they got the job. Look what kavod does to a person. He wants the honor. He wants to have that job, even though he knows he won't make it for too long, because he doesn't deserve to be the high priest. You're in that position to pray, you're in that position to ask Hashem, then make sure that you do it with kodesh, with holiness. The last verse, Yevarechecha Adonai Mitzion oseh shamayim va'aretz. May Hashem, who makes the heaven and earth, bless you from Zion. So what is this pasuk adding? It's reminding us that in this lifetime, we get berachot from Kohanim, we get blessings from all kinds of people, but in the end, Yevarechecha Hashem Mitzion. Hashem is going to be the one to directly bless you. You won't need intermediaries. Not that it's bad, it's just a difference between the way things are right now and the way things will be in the future. In the future, the bracha will come directly from Zion, will come directly from Hashem. But why add the words Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz? I haven't seen anybody explain this. The one who makes the heaven and earth, he will bless you from Zion. Just say Hashem, Yivarech Hashem in Zion. You have to add Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz, the one who makes the heaven and the earth. Anybody want to suggest? Interesting addition, an extra detail describing Hashem. You could say many things about this. At that point, the whole world will recognize that He's Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. This is referring to the end of days when everybody will become cognizant of the fact that He is the one that's responsible for everything. You think that He just gives berachot? That's His only title? The God that gives blessings? The God that provides sustenance? No! He did everything. Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz, the same one who created the world, the same one who made the heavens and the earth. Look what He has been doing till now. He's been maintaining the world. The world could have been destroyed by now. Hashem did not let it be destroyed. He's the one that's responsible for everything. That's the extra emphasis over here. If He created the world, He can bless you too. And that is why people who have a hard time with the resurrection, with Chiyat HaMetim, I simply remind them, He brought you here the first time around. You don't think He can bring you a second time? The first time around is a miracle. For a human being to be created, for a human being to come to the world, it's an incredible miracle. Look at the baby when it comes out of the mother's womb. An entire life. Who made this? Not the parents, even though, of course, biologically the parents are involved, but it's Hashem who instills life into that baby. He brought him in the first time. You don't think He can bring him back again? But he's dead, he's gone. So what? The first time He was not around either. But somehow He came. If He came once, He can come. If He came once, He can come again. Beracha, therefore, is something very, very special that we don't understand. How could there be a beracha? What's a blessing? A blessing means that Hashem can change everything around. Anything. Hashem can do it because He created the world. So therefore, it will become clear to us that the beracha ultimately comes from Hashem.